Hello and welcome to From Impossible to Inevitable. I am your host, Megan Bauer. Thank you so much for joining me today and pushing play on today's episode. This is episode 192, and as this episode is published, it will be Halloween. A happy Halloween. Now, Halloween is not my favorite. I actually really don't like Halloween. I don't like the scary stuff. I don't like the gore. I don't like the costuming. I don't like the trick-or-treating. I don't like the cold, to be honest. And in Utah, it is always cold on Halloween night. And my ideal Halloween would really just be to buy each kid the biggest bag of candy we can find and go out to dinner. But they love the whole thing. They love dressing up. They love trick-or-treating. They love carving pumpkins. And so we do absolutely all of it. But I don't really like Halloween. I don't like to be scared at all. I don't like that feeling. So today, for Halloween, we are going to talk a little bit about fear. And I'm going to be tying this in to the episode from last week as well, episode 190, in which we talked about stepping into your capacity. So if you get to a point where you feel a little bit lost, go back and listen to episode 190, and hopefully that clears up any confusion. So when you step into your capacity, when you start to fulfill your potential, when you start to become who it is that you were born to become, when you start to really intentionally become this person, it's going to trigger fear. It's just going to. And it's going to for a few reasons. So one of them is that it's going to require you to do things differently. And when you do things differently, you'll get different results, right? That's just kind of how it works. But when we are uncertain about the results, when we're uncertain about how people will react to us, when we are uncertain about what the effect of our new way of doing things is, it will trigger fear. Will it work out? Will people like me? Will people judge me? Blah, blah. Will I lose my friends? Will whatever. It will trigger fear of getting kicked out of the tribe or of doing something wrong or of failing or whatever it is. So the fear will trigger when we do something differently. The fear is also going to trigger in a big, big way that you might not immediately recognize. So I'm going to tell you about it so that you can be watching for it. Because when you're watching for it, then you can work through it. So when we go through life and we adopt all of these ways of being and all of these ways of showing up in the world that aren't necessarily true to who we are, it's kind of like putting on a mask. It's kind of like wearing a mask, right? It's kind of like a Halloween costume. We go around and we've got this, Halloween costume on, and we don't even realize, we've been wearing it so long and we've been, adding details and bedazzling it here for so long that we don't even realize it's a costume. We don't even realize it. It's just part of what we do, just part of who we are, we think. When there's a version on the inside of us that is like truly who we are, that is the truest version of us. And I think that there's definitely a range, right, with how much of our trueness we let out into the world and how much of it we keep inside. Some people are really, really good at it. Some people are like, yeah, this is just who I am, and you guys can just do whatever. And then there's some people that, you feel like you don't even know them at all because they are just so shielded. They don't show who they are. They don't let any of that out. Okay, so there's definitely a range here. I'm not saying that we're all wearing full body masks all of the time because that's not true either. But I'm using the analogy to make a point, okay? So let's say we've got all of this stuff, the things that we do because we That's what we do in society, the things that we do because that's what's expected of us, the things that we do because that's just what we've always done, the things that we do because that's what we were conditioned to do, our ways of being, our habits, the way we live life, all of this. We've got beliefs around all of it. And it's not all necessarily inauthentic. Some of it is, some of it's not. Part of the process is figuring out which is which. Okay? But the scary part comes when you've been wearing a mask and somebody's like, "Oh, your mask is ugly." And you're just like, "Well, it's just a mask, whatever." Like, I don't care what you think, it's just a mask. So it doesn't penetrate because you're just like, "Whatever. I'm not being me anyway, so I don't care what you think." But when we're not wearing a mask and somebody's like, "Ooh, your face is ugly." And you're just like, "Wait, that hurts." Like, why would you say that? Because there's nothing shielding us. So when we're walking around as a truer version of ourselves, stepping into our capacity, working on fulfilling our potential, and to do those things, you have to step into who you truly are and be who you are meant to become. That is a vulnerable place because we're taking off all of these pretenses. We're taking off all of these obligations. We're taking off the conditioning. We're taking off these things and we're showing up as who we really are. And when somebody judges who we really are as ugly or not enough or whatever negative thing, it hurts. And that fear of being hurt can be powerful enough to keep us from stepping into that place because we don't want to be hurt. Because that's the whole point of fear, right? Fear is a very helpful thing that protects us. It protects us physically, it protects us emotionally and mentally. And we don't want to get hurt. But as protective as it is, you have to work through the fear and not let it control your decision-making process. Because the fear is going to keep you the same. It's going to keep you small. It's going to keep you from trying things differently. It's going to keep you from fulfilling your potential. It's going to keep you from exploring your capacity to being who it is that you want to become. Because the whole process of becoming requires growth. And growth requires trying things and making an effort in different areas and working through things. That growth requires action. And the fear, if you let it control your actions, it will keep you from your growth because it is way more comfortable, right? To just be who you've always been, right? We already have so many of these things on autopilot. We already know how it goes. We already know what the results will be, even if we don't want the results. We already know how people will react, even if we don't like their reactions. We already know what the deal is. And when you start showing up differently and when you start doing things differently, you're going to get different results, different reactions, different effects to your cause, right? Like things are going to happen differently. And just the unknown of that is scary. We fear the unknown. That's just normal, right? We fear the unknown. Even if we don't like what we're currently experiencing, or even if we don't like what our current effect is, we know what it is. And likely, even if we don't like it, we know how to deal with it. And even if we don't like it, we're really comfortable with complaining about it because it just is. It's just part of it. But when we change things, now we don't know. And now we don't know if we'll be judged for it. Now we don't know if anybody will relate to us. And now we don't know if we can handle it. And now we don't know blah, 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 blah. Right? So that fear is trying to keep you from experiencing all that. But it's also going to keep you from experiencing all of the positive things too, right? Like, what if things turn out really great? What if things are better than you expect? What if, if your friends decide they don't like you anymore? What if new great friends are on the other side of that, are maybe more suitable to who you're becoming or whatever it is. Whatever it is. Whatever your fear is telling you could happen, the other side of that is that there's a positive thing that could happen too. And your fear is going to keep you from both, right? Like it's going to tell you all about the negative, the possibility of the negative, and it's going to ignore the possibility of the positive as much as possible because it doesn't want you to change because it's unknown and that's scary. Okay. So, I was having this conversation with my daughter recently, and it was really good. And she had recently discovered a fear, and I don't want to go into the fear, but she had recently discovered that there are some people afraid of this thing. And I was like, yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing that some people deal with, and that's, one of their struggles in life is they have to deal with this fear. And I asked her, I said, how do you think they could overcome that? And she said, well, they could overcome it by doing the thing that they're afraid of. And I was like, yeah, that's right. And I kept asking her questions. I said, now, do you think that fear will go away after they do it one time? And she said, no. And I said, twice? She said, no. 3 times? No. And I kept asking her, and she kept saying no, all the way up until I said, what about the 10th time? And then she said, maybe. And I loved that hesitant maybe, because it showed me that she knew that although they were facing their fears again and again and again and again, the 10th time was still a maybe. They still might have that fear the 10th time of doing the thing that they're afraid of. And of course, I related this back to her. I'm teaching her. I'm teaching her and myself because it was a good reminder. It's like, yes, you have to do it over and over and over again. And it's kind of like you wear down that fear. This fear's got this hold of you, this gripping hold of you. And the more you push against it and go through the thing, go do the thing anyway, and go try it anyway, the more that fear loosens its grip. But after the first time, you're not going to feel a difference. After the second time, you're not going to feel a difference. Maybe after the 10th time, you'll feel a difference. And I highlighted to her that it was the frequency and the repetition that will really have the most impact. So if you have this fear and you face that fear, and then, you celebrate for a minute, but then you don't face that fear again for another 2 weeks, it's going to feel just as strong, especially if the fear kept you from facing, doing the thing for those past 2 weeks. You have to keep showing up and you have to keep facing it over and over and over and over and over again with frequency and repetition in order for it to have the maximum effect. But she was spot on with that. And as we step into who it is that we want to become, it's really going to be the frequency and the repetition that's going to wear down the fear. And as I mentioned in episode 190, that as you step into who it is you're meant to become, as you start to make your impact, as you start to explore your gifts, as you start to reach your potential, you will feel a difference in your body. You might feel the fear before. You probably will, to be honest. You'll have that fear, but the more you do the thing that is so you, that is so for you, you will feel the difference in your body and you'll be like, oh my gosh, that felt so good because that was so me. And that was so how I'm supposed to show up in this world. And that is so who I am meant to become. And that feels so good in my body. You will know that you are on the right track. So yeah, you'll feel the fear and then you'll feel the difference, right? And that will feel expansive. It will feel freeing. It will feel light. It'll feel like you can go out and lift a car. It will feel so good. I remember one time I think I might have been sick. I can't remember what the situation was exactly. I was not doing great. I think I was sick. but I knew I had to record because I was going to publish the podcast on time no matter what. And so I recorded. And afterwards, I was like, I should have been doing this the whole time because I now feel great. Like, I feel so good. Like, I might have still been sick, but I wasn't like this blobby, lethargic sick. I was like, I don't know. I still have a runny nose, but you know what? I feel great because that was me being the person I was meant to become. That was me doing the work that was meant for me to do. And I was rewarded for that in my body. Podcast day is always my favorite day because it always feels so good. And as you do your work, whatever it is that you are uniquely suited to do, whatever is out there for you to do, your body will reinforce it. It'll be like, yes, you are on the right track. This is what you are supposed to be doing. Do this more, please. Thank you. And then the fear, if you let it, will creep in and be like, yeah, but was it really that good? But are you really meant to do this? Like, what about all the other podcasts out there with, the professional studio and all of the, you know, whateverness, like the fear can creep in and tell you that you're not good enough and tell you that your gift isn't really that special, tell you that you're not really that special, tell you that it doesn't really matter because it wants to keep you small and protected and safe. But that's not what the whole thing's about. It's not about staying the same. The whole thing is about becoming. It's about becoming who it is you're meant to become, to fulfill that potential, to make your impact, to have your, magnify your capacity, to make your difference. And you can only make your difference, your personal difference, when you fully step into who it is you're meant to become. And I say fully step into it, but you don't even have to be fully there in order to start making a difference. You just have to lean in a little bit and you can start making your difference. But of course, the more you lean in, the more you step in, the more you jump in, the more you leap, of course, the bigger the effect, the bigger the impact, the bigger the wave, right? Of course. It's just how it works. So fear is a bugger. But the important thing to know, the important takeaway is that fear can't actually control you without you allowing it to. Fear doesn't actually get to make any decisions unless you allow it to. Fear is just a thing that's there and can hang out next to you, and you can choose to listen to it or turn up the radio. I think it was Liz Gilbert that made this analogy in Big Magic. She talks about like driving, like going on her creative journey. It was Liz Gilbert. It was Big Magic. She goes on her creative journey and fear doesn't get to drive. Fear doesn't get to change the radio. Fear doesn't have an input at all, but by all means, it can sit there and hang out. And that's the perspective, right? Like sometimes fear is just going to sit there and it's going to hang out with you, but it doesn't get to make the choices and it certainly doesn't get to drive. You get to drive. You get to make the choices. You get to turn up the volume on the radio if fear is being a little too chatty because that's what fear does. I love this so much. Thank you for joining me today. Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween. I am so glad you are here. Thank you. Thank you. If you haven't subscribed to my email list, you can do that below. You can also follow me on social media, which I am being way more active on. I've got some fun announcements, some fun things going on, all of the fun. It's going to be great. Thank you for joining me today. I totally love you. Bye for now.